I got a lot of questions asking for dream interpretation about why do we dream about narcissist parents or a toxic ex. So I'm sharing my perspective for you, and I'm specifically feeling into the sleeping prophet Edgar Casey's approach. He believed every dream is a doorway to healing, but only if you understand what it's actually saying. Otherwise, you may end up focusing on the wrong person while completely missing the fear, the wound, or the self-sabotaging belief that's asking to be seen. And the danger of missing your dream messages is that the real source of your pain stays exactly where it is, but also it leaves you with no clear target for personal growth and transformation. I was contemplating these questions that I was getting, and the other night I fell asleep right after I read a Reddit post from someone who had dreamed about a narcissist ex, and she wondered if it meant that he was her soulmate. It didn't mean that, but I didn't respond because I knew that the answer was way more complicated than that, and I couldn't really articulate why at the time. And then I had a dream that night that brought me back to a time in my life when I was right in that person's shoes. And I'll go through that dream with you at the end. So if you like dream talk, watch that at the end. But first, let's talk about you. Is chronicling your dreams part of your morning routine already? Because when you're not in the practice of paying attention to your dreams, you may find yourself repeatedly cycling backwards and latching on to new toxic situations, even when you fully want better for yourself. Why does that happen? Well, based on my own personal experience here, it's because at the time we're in the middle of the pain, and the focus at that point is on stopping the pain. And when we leave that toxic relationship, we finally get to have our peace back. But it's still too soon to dig into that wound, so we wait. Then suddenly years have passed and the memory of the situation fades and the pain level is much lower. But this is the danger zone because fading pain is not the same thing as healing. That's why we can end up in similar situations years later and not understand how it happened. We've been through it before. We swore we'd never do it again. But if we never really looked into it in the first place, then the lesson is still there waiting for us. And those answers are showing up prominently every night in your dreams. Casey's approach to dreams is that they're designed to change the dreamer, not merely inform them. And I think that's an important distinction because when an ex or a narcissist parent shows up in a dream, we might focus on that person and wonder if it means that we need to contact them or what info can we get about them, or like the Reddit post, whether you're soulmates. And I don't think in general people dream about toxic exes years later because they're soulmates, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. That's just a convo for another day. But for right now, let's look at why they show up in your dreams in the first few years after you end the relationship, or if it's a parent, after you grow up. After a toxic relationship ends, dreams are often very different from the dreams that come later. These dreams can be super intense. You might dream that you're trapped somewhere with that person or trying to escape them or arguing with them, being chased or manipulated or abandoned, or constantly trying to explain yourself and never being heard. Sometimes you wake up feeling exactly the way that you felt during that relationship. And it's unfortunate, but if your parents were the narcissist, your ex was merely a stand-in for them, even after you leave the ex and heal. And you may still dream of that dynamic but it's usually in childhood settings because there's more to heal from the hurt and damage that you suffered in those early years. So in the early stages of leaving, the dream isn't necessarily trying to teach you anything at that point. Sometimes it's simply helping your mind and body recover from what happened and reminding you that you were never meant to feel this bad in life. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but look at it like this. If your relationship was deeply toxic, especially if you became heavily invested in their needs or problems or their mission, those dreams need to remind you of the bad times because you're untangling yourself from an entire reality that you were recently fully submerged within. And your dream self does not want you to go back to that. So these dreams are a sigh of relief. But fortunately, as your orbit moves further away from that person, your dreams will shift. And so there's sort of a middle phase that happens because enough time has actually passed or actually distance that it finally feels safe to look at something deeper. And that's what Casey meant, that the dream is showing up because you're ready to look within. In my own experience of overcoming a toxic ex, it took years and it showed up in my dreams how I was progressing and really helped me not relapse into that same situation with someone else. But that's the part that's hard to see. The part when you're finally ready to understand why you got caught up with that person in the first place. That's because the relationship may have been where the wound became impossible to ignore, and it's easier to focus on something that happened recently. But just because that's where it showed up most clearly doesn't mean that that's where it started. And that doesn't mean that we sit around blaming our childhood either. It means that we dig deep and start to identify self-sabotaging patterns that just seem normal to us. How do we find those patterns? My mom had this phrase, you can't see the forest through the trees. And that feels so appropriate here. There's so much junk to deal with in front of you that it's hard to see the whole picture and how it got that way. And that's why I always say that looking at your dreams is an easy way to help you start seeing the whys. Not necessarily interpreting the dream and finding out what each little nuanced thing in your dream means, because some of these dreams, they are long, complicated, and just weird. The way that I look at dreams is that they are conversation pieces. These type of dreams are meant to be talked about because until this point, you didn't even know how to talk about these challenges. If you were conditioned early in your life that your needs weren't your caretaker's priority, and it didn't even matter if you said what you needed or not, then later in life, when you're in a relationship or even friendships or work, you're already so far removed from yourself that you may not even know that you have needs, let alone that they need tending to, or that you just need to say what you want. Because again, you were taught over time that your needs weren't important or that other people's needs override yours. So in terms of relationships, when you meet someone who has strong personal needs themselves, it can feel strangely natural to become deeply invested in that person while at the same time not paying any mind to your own needs. So naturally, dreams in this middle phase prominently display those narcissists in early life, or that toxic ex, or even someone in your current life who you've become entangled with that you may not even realize yet that that person has the same attributes as that previous relationship. So in this phase of healing and healthy detachment, family members can show up in dreams and childhood homes can appear, memories, schools, or situations where you felt rejected, overlooked, controlled, abandoned, or responsible for someone else's stuff. And this is good, even if it feels disheartening, because it helps bring attention away from the relationship and toward the foundation underneath it. This is the point where our dreams help us discover that the relationship didn't create the pattern, it triggered something that was already there. The dream starts connecting dots between the person we chose and the beliefs that we learned much earlier in life. When you talk about these dreams, what you uncover is programming that your brain has been cycling in the background, telling you automatically before you even think about it. Things like love requires self sacrifice, my needs come second, keeping the peace is more important than speaking my truth. So the X in the dream becomes a doorway into understanding why the relationship felt familiar in the first place. These middle dreams can be uncomfortable because when you dig into them, you discover that they remove the X from the center of the story. And it's definitely easier to focus on what the other person did to you than to look at the older programming that made certain behaviors seem normal, acceptable, or even attractive to you. And that doesn't take away from the fact that the other person was wrong or abusive or downright despicable, but you can't change them. You can only change yourself. And that's why this middle phase is where transformation begins. It's not just relief, and even more than just healing. So if your dreams are here, pat yourself on the back. You're ready. You're already doing it. Keep moving with it. And if I could answer that woman on Reddit today, and I tried to find the post the next day, but sadly I couldn't find it, I'd tell her that maybe the dream is showing up now because she's finally ready to understand something that she couldn't see before about herself. And maybe the dream is giving her a chance to recognize that pattern before it shows up again and ask her to make the same choice, that invitation to abandon herself. So now for those of you who are healing warriors, and now it's been years since that last run-in with a narcissist ex or parent, what do your dreams look like now when they do show up? I'm betting that they are something much less urgent, or maybe even coming up to help you illustrate a point or how to help someone else, which is exactly what my dream was doing after I fell asleep contemplating this whole thing. And don't forget, I promised to share that dream at the end if you're interested in dreams like I am. Not everyone is. Okay, late healing phases, but the narcissist energy is still coming into your dreams. It's okay, don't worry. Years after ending it, dreams change. If you've been consistently digging and healing from it, but the core message may not completely go away. So instead of feeling trapped in the dream, you may find yourself willingly talking to the person, sitting with them, considering them, and entertaining the possibility of being with them again. That's what makes these dreams kind of unsettling. The dream is showing if any pull still exists, not necessarily toward that person, but toward the pattern itself. The dream is less interested in what the ex did and more interested in what happened inside of you and how you've grown into more of who you are because of that relationship. It may show you exactly how you got drawn in before because now you can finally see it happening in real time. In the case of my dream, it was really meant to help me talk about it right here in this video because, as I said, I wasn't sure how to articulate what I wanted to share with you all about these types of dreams. And I'm super far removed from the pain of that relationship. Actually, we talked years later, and it was really cathartic and truly a blessing to hear from them. That definitely was a coming full circle kind of thing. So in the dream, I noticed a light flicker outside, and I wondered if someone was there. I put up a shield in front of the windows, and then suddenly my ex unlocked the front door and walked right in, and I didn't even recognize him at first. Now, the fact that he had the key to unlock my door is a point too. These narcissistic behaviors are key because they need to be acting this way. Otherwise, we're not going to open up. And I'm talking about when we're not healed yet. And I actually like that there was light flickering. That tells me that this dream isn't about my shadow or the need to do additional work. It's about something that I can bring to light. And tell me, did you notice something else? The doorway. Remember how I said these dreams are a doorway for healing if you understand what they're saying to you? So the dream literally gave me that talking point. The first thing that I did when he barged in was make sure that I had my phone handy in case something happened to me. I could call for help. And he tried to take it from me. And we ended up in this tug of war over it, but I won. Then we started talking, and right away I thought about how toxic that relationship had been and how grateful I was that it was finally over. And I remember thinking how different my life is now. We talked about one thing and then another, and before I knew it, I was right back there, fully on board with his mission, just like before. And check this part of the dream out. The shield was there. The phone was there. I had protection. I had awareness. I even won that tug of war. So this wasn't a dream where I had no power. We always have the power. It's our choice to give it away. Notice that when the conversation started, that was the doorway. It was familiarity. That's what pulled me back in. So next in the dream, suddenly he was gone and I was sitting around a table with my brother and one of my sisters, and they were talking about our mom. My brother was upset because he said that he felt like our mom hadn't really been there for us. So you can see how this dream is actually taking me backwards in time so that I can remember how the ex was really just a stand-in. And I recall that I said I didn't even recognize him at first. That's about how we don't see clearly when these people are entering our lives. It's like we're so blind to it, and then the dream says, okay, now let's go back to childhood. What were you feeling then? And again, for this particular dream, my inner dream self sent it to me to help me talk about it in this video. It was telling me how dreams show where the core pain actually comes from. Almost like the dream was saying, you think it's about him, but it isn't. I can give you a snippet of what brought me into healing finally. It wasn't that I finished with this ex and spent the next 10 years to get 100% better. No, it's not like that usually, not typically, but what happened is time passed and I did slowly and methodically work on transforming myself, but I hadn't yet made great strides in that area. I met my soon-to-be husband. He actually came to me in a dream and I knew he was the one from that dream. Anyway, circumstances changed in my life. Kids grew up, locations changed, and things just became completely different. The pain faded and eventually it didn't even make sense to revisit it anymore. Why would I? It felt like old news. It felt finished. But I think this is where a lot of us get confused at that point, including me. We think if we're not crying about it anymore, if we've stopped checking their social media, when we know we would never choose them again, then we think that means that the whole thing is healed. Some of it is, of course, but just because we leave them and stop feeling bad about it doesn't mean that we ever transformed that pain into more of what we're here to do on this planet.